Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think we are working today. Ultimately, yeah, last week was a little bit of a problem. Lots of upgrades, either with the Mac or Safari or Zoom, all at the same time. So wasn't the best week as far as that's concerned to do a live stream. But thanks for joining me again this week. It's a slightly different week, but at least the early mural this week is actually from Long Beach. I'm actually in Long Beach right now, so lots of interesting murals and lots of ocean themed murals down here. So yes, we have uh, the cranes and the ocean. It was actually very interesting from my run by the beach yesterday morning. But yeah, it's been an interesting conference, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein. Thank you for joining me again this week. This is the 130th installment of my weekly office hours. Happy Friday. Hoping everyone is staying well, staying cool, staying healthy. It's not been easy, especially over this past week, to stay cool, especially. We've now reached 907 days since March 16, 2020 county health order started the shelter in place in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19. Over 2 years ago, I converted my weekly office hours into this live stream address, and I haven't missed a week since. I've delayed because of technical difficulties, but people still say they appreciate hearing from their mayor each week, whether they're watching this video live or watching it delayed by a few days or sometimes even weeks. But it allows me to reach a lot more people than my in-person office hours. I get to look back over the last 2 weeks and just give you some updates, and especially some upcoming events, some information about upcoming events, and then just provide some general words of encouragement. So thanks for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for Sunnyvale. Most Fridays, I end up following the live stream with in-person office hours. But actually this week I am in a hotel down in Long Beach. And so at a conference. And so ultimately my distance has made that impossible. But if you ever want to reach me, you can always email me at council@larryklein.com and reserve 15 minutes or 30-minute time slots at my upcoming office hours. So I'll be meeting again there next week on the 16th. So you can join me then. Let's go ahead and get started and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last 2 weeks. Last Monday, I was up early for the Artemis rocket countdown, hopefully going back to the moon. But of course, that was postponed. It was canceled again last Saturday, and it looks like it'll be several weeks before they actually attempt that launch again. So too bad for those space aficionados out there. But hopefully we'll see that going up sometime in the next month. And then last Tuesday, council met, and we started with a study session to discuss potential gun control ordinances that we might enact. And so that was a good discussion. It's looking at potential ordinances. We talked about a ballot measure, and there wasn't time for a ballot measure. We had some residents propose some things, and there's certain things that they proposed that we should enact that are still going through, that have already been enacted and are conceivably going through the court systems right now. So waiting for those makes a lot of sense. But council gave some general feedback to the city attorney, and now they're going off and kind of figuring out what to carve out and what we can do as far as ordinances are concerned. As far as the main meeting, we were supposed to choose the final designs for both Mary Avenue and Evelyn and Sunnyvale Avenue and Evelyn Caltrain grade separations. But Vice Mayor Cisneros hadn't actually received the response from the FPPC, and that's the Fair Political Practices Commission regarding her potential conflicts of interest. They're taking a little bit longer to respond than normal, so she actually was going to have to recuse herself. Ultimately, we decided to postpone that decision until September 27th, and she still may have to recuse herself depending upon what the FPPC decides. It's all based upon whether or not you have a vested interest as an owner or a renter in what the decisions that we're making, and conceivably she lives very close to the Caltrain's grade separation or the Caltrain crossing at Sunnyvale Avenue in Evelyn, and so conceivably that might have affected or might affect the value of where she's renting and what they might charge or things of that nature. So, but we did actually make a decision on the Mary Avenue crossing. We ultimately chose the jug handle option, and ultimately that is basically Evelyn remains at the same level it is now. Mary goes underneath Evelyn, and then there's a quote unquote jug handle that comes from the basically goes east and back and connects up back to Evelyn where it is now. So we've already started the purchase of land to make that viable. And these decisions are really time critical from a funding and a scheduling issue. So we need to finalize them soon. I was a little hesitant to postpone it even until the end of September, but ultimately that's what we did. I think we're still able to get that finalized relatively soon, but we are our back is against the wall, especially for certain funding requirements and decisions being made at the Caltrain board right now. We also had two special orders of the day, one of which was National Library Card Sign-Up Month, which is September. And so the library is actually sponsoring a library card design contest. So if you're interested, you can go on the city website and the library website and find out, but they will actually be featuring the winning artwork for two new library cards. So if you're interested in that, and the contest runs from September 1st to October 15th. So if you're have an artistic bent, then go ahead and find out how to apply. And then of course we also honored Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September 15th through October 15th. So that's coming up also. And then on Wednesday night and until actually early Thursday morning, after 8 months in session, the legislative session came to an end. So, the law, our state senators and state assembly members had until the end of the day, at the end of however long that day is, to basically figure out what bills are going to be passed, agreed upon and passed to the governor's desk. So, they rushed, rushed to pass hundreds of bills that were remaining before ultimately it ended on Wednesday night, Thursday morning. And some of those measures had urgency clauses which allowed them to take effect immediately when the governor signed them. There are lots of high-profile measures heading to the governor's desk, and ultimately, establishing California as a progressive leader on abortion access, on counter climate change, and transgender health are all one of the things that the governor is about to sign. And then several bills also, the governor came back and actually lobbied lawmakers to approve them and make changes at the last minute. So I heard from several state legislators about how the governor in the last few weeks, kind of upset the apple cart and basically tried to get new bills or major changes to bills that hadn't been discussed for the last few months. So not everything that was contentious made it through. Bills to restrict bail cost, allow legislative staff to unionize, and those to preserve California's concealed carry gun limits all went down before the final votes and before they closed the session. And then a bill that would allow teenagers to get vaccines without parental permission. It was actually pulled without a vote on Wednesday. So certain bills, the governor said it wouldn't have been in his best presidential run interest to actually have him sign or not sign. So Newsom has until the end of September to either sign or veto the bills that did pass. But there are lots of bills, and we're already writing lots of veto. Yeah, please, Governor, veto this bill or that bill, and that includes AB 2011 and SB 6, which I talked about recently. Those were the ones that basically allowed developers to build housing on any commercial retail location. There was also, and so we have lots of veto advocacy going to the governor's desk. One of the other kind of controversial things was keeping Diablo Canyon open and giving PG&E another $1.2 billion to do it. I definitely think keeping Diablo Canyon open, especially as we see with potential rolling blackouts and all that, it's critical to make sure that we have the energy that we need as we're moving towards renewables. But that option of Diablo Canyon, I do think makes a big difference. Last Thursday, we had a flex alert from 4 to 9 p.m. But if that was the start of pretty much a week of flex alerts, almost, especially this week. So please reduce your electric usage during flex alert time, and it's almost 4 to 9, or actually I saw a notice of 3 to 10, depending upon the day and how much and how hot it was going to get. Luckily, we haven't had any rolling blackouts, although a few cities implemented them with miscommunication with the PUC and the state departments as far as whether or not they were required. But ultimately, people are doing the right thing. They are listening to the text. The first time PG&E had texted in multiple years to please stave off as much electric usage as you can. And so that actually went forward, and people have been good. It's not been easy, and I thank everyone for their hard work of trying to weather the heat as good as possible. Most people don't have air conditioning, and rely on cool nights and hopefully closing up the house during the day to weather a very hot days that we've been having. It's actually here in Long Beach, the weather has been very hot, and now looks like a tropical storm about to come in. So now muggy for the last few days. It's not just been hot, but hot and muggy and very humid. Last Thursday, the FDA approved new booster shots. So ultimately, a latest booster with certain vaccine variant control that has been approved. So that is rolling out, and that started rolling out in Santa Clara County earlier this week on Wednesday. Last weekend, of course, was Labor Day weekend. City offices were closed on Monday, although we did have the library open as a cooling center, and thanks to our CERT volunteers who helped out to make sure that the cooling center actually was operational. So thank you for everyone who helped out there. And then as far as this week, on Wednesday, the county began distributing booster shots. So if you need to get your booster, the county is trying to help out as much as possible and making sure that those are available. And then on Wednesday, I joined the California League of Cities conference here in Long Beach. So, this is one of several, there's the California League of Cities, there's the National League of Cities, and the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And I attend some of the conferences when I can, depending upon how busy life gets and, events happening in Sunnyvale and in my personal life, of course. But ultimately, it's good to be back in person. It's good to, help lobby and advocate. And also it's great to hear on what other cities are doing around California on, issues that we face. So dealing with unhoused issues, urban renewal, parklets, and, and outdoor dining. It is a hodgepodge of different issues. There's so many concurrent sessions that you have to kind of pick and choose what you think might be best. But ultimately, it's actually been good from that standpoint to attend and make our voice heard from a Sunnyvale standpoint. And it's also good from talking to other council members and mayors from around the state, and giving them suggestions on the good things that Sunnyvale does. Our public safety model, our 10-year balanced budget and 20-year plan, all those sorts of things of how to deal with unfunded infrastructure costs, and how to deal with long-term viability for your city, making sure that you're meeting the needs of your residents. So it's good to be able to talk about what's happening in your city, and happy to be able to do it here in Long Beach. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly COVID numbers. The numbers continue to stabilize from a national standpoint. We've now reached over 95 million cases. That increased about 500,000 in the last week. We are seeing that slowly trend downward. We've had about 224 million fully vaccinated. That's about 2/3 of the population, and over 48% have received their booster, and 83.8% of those 5 and older have received at least one dose. So, nationally, 77% of adults are fully vaccinated, but we still have people passing away with COVID. Another 3,000 just in the last week. So we're at 1,044,000 deaths because of COVID. As far as California, we've now had 10,314,000 positive cases. We've seen a continued drop on our daily average, but we're still more than 7,000 new positive cases a day. So definitely, I wore my mask a lot here in Long Beach, wherever I could, except of course eating meals, and wherever I felt safe when I was outdoors or things of that nature. But there are a lot of people are still getting COVID. But that is trending downward. 7,000 a day now. It was 83,000 last week. 94,000 the week before, 11,000, 13,000. So it's definitely trended downward. Our test case positivity is now at 7.5%. And we had about 200 deaths in the last week in California. So we're now over 94,000 deaths. And then from a county standpoint, our cumulative case count is now at 427,000, another 4,000 positive cases with COVID in the last week. And then there were an additional 16 deaths, so 2,449 deaths in the county. And more than 95% of those 18 and older are fully vaccinated, and 69% of those that are eligible for the booster have already received it. So we're doing very well from a county standpoint, and I continue to do lots of advocating on our city's behalf. Talking to county health, talking to our supervisors. As for testing, the county has brought testing back into Sunnyvale. It's now on the first and third Thursday of the month. So it'll be back on next Thursday, the 15th. If you want to get tested, all you need to do is go to sccfreetest.org, and you can basically reserve a time slot and come by and get tested. And then as far as getting vaccinated, you can go to sccfreevax.org. As far as where you can get your booster or get your first shot. And then vaccines.gov is the federal location, which also has a lot of the pharmacies that are providing the booster and the vaccinations. Let me go ahead and announce some of the upcoming events that we have going. Tonight, so Friday night, Sunset Movies at Washington Park will resume. We had one last month. We have one this month at 7 p.m. You can bring a lawn chair or a blanket and be on the grass there in Washington Park and see Luca. So if you want to come join that. And then tomorrow, Saturday, there are a lot of things going on. One of which, of course, is the Heritage Park Museum's Walk Through Time. And so this year is the 110th anniversary of our city's incorporation. But from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow, there's going to be tons of booths, kind of focusing on our Native Americans, our immigrant populations, um, booths on industry, so Lockheed Martin, Westinghouse, Northrop Grumman, and then even several other museums are actually coming in. So the Handy Iron Man Museum, the Moffett Field Museum, the Portuguese Historical Museum, Japanese American Museum, and then there's other music and dance. The Friends of the Stevens Creek Trail will be hosting a free bike corral. So if you want to go there by bike, you can safely park your bike there. So lots of good things. Definitely, I'll be there for a little while. So come by. So that's at the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum. That's right next to the orchard, right behind the community center, the senior center, right next to the Bianchi barn. So come join all the fun tomorrow from 11 to 4. And then at the library, there's going to be an art exhibit. So that happens Saturday and Sunday, but there'll be a reception at noon, from noon to 1. So if you get a chance, come by for that. All that's free. In Cupertino, there's actually an Armenian festival at St. Andrew's Armenian Church. So if you're Armenian or want to try some Armenian food, that's happening. And then next Saturday, the 17th, there's actually no farmers market. So the farmers market operators decided to cancel because there's going to be lots of pouring of concrete right there along Murphy Avenue and Washington. And so just from the safety of residents and kind of the amount of noise that was going to be happening there, they decided to cancel that as opposed to move it. And then next Saturday, September 17th, will be the State of the City. So from 9 a.m. to about 11:30 a.m., there'll be the State of the City. We'll be honoring our boards and commission members, and then we'll also have the award ceremony. So basically our community awards and the mayor's awards. So please consider joining us. That's at the Heritage Park Museum, their plaza. And so ultimately a lot of fun and good to see everybody back in person. As far as upcoming council meetings, next Tuesday, the 13th, we'll be choosing the art for the lobbies in the new City Hall. We'll be defining and kind of choosing some of the downtown gateway signs. So those are the signs that will go at McKinley and Matilda, as well as Washington and Matilda. So one will be a big arch and one will be kind of a median artwork. So that's coming up. We'll also be doing we'll also look at introducing an ordinance for amending Sunnyvale's municipal code about filling vacancies on city council. So this is, as we go through the process, we appointed Tony Spitaleri earlier this year, but we found issues with that process in case there's ties. And so that's one of the things that we wanted to fix. And then Tuesday, September 20th, there'll be a Moffett Park mobility meeting. Ultimately, it's good to kind of keep moving that specific plan forward and talking about the mobility that's required there. And then on Tuesday, September 27th, at the main meeting, we'll be choosing the final design for the Senegal Avenue Caltrain grade separation. We're also looking at conceivably finalizing the pilot program with Bird Scooter and Bike Share. So all that is moving forward. I've been a big bike advocate, and kind of bike share and scooter share has been something that our residents have been part of our residents have been wanting and been part of, at least from a climate action plan. I think that was one of the things that they were looking at. Let's go ahead and get to our weekly questions. If you have questions, just add them to the chat. Linda asks, can you have the county reschedule the spraying for West Nile virus mosquitoes for tonight? It's going to be over 90 degrees during the day, and many of us don't have air conditioning. We'd have to close our windows by 10 p.m. and it will make for a very uncomfortable night. If they could delay it by just a few days when it's cooler, it would be much better for residents. Can you please help? So I've reached out to the county vector and county supervisors. This is already scheduled. Hopefully they can delay. Right now, I haven't heard any confirmation that they're considering it, but my guess is because they've done all the outreach already, They're not going to change the path that they've been set on, but we'll see. But I'll give an update later today in the afternoon on what I get back from the county. But right now, I'm afraid, Linda, that's most likely going to happen. And I understand the issues. Hopefully, you'd have to close it from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. And then opening them up as soon as you can in the morning. But I understand lots of people don't have air conditioning. And I wish they had thought about that before they scheduled it and put out all the notices. Phil asked, is there a process to request stop signs and pedestrian lights at intersections in Sunnyvale? The crossing at Murphy Avenue at West Iowa has pretty high traffic due to entering Whole Foods and Target parking lots. The pedestrians crossing currently has no signs, and a lot of cars tend to either speed through the intersection or turn fast. Thanks. Yes, there is a traffic calming process, and you can get a petition together. I'll actually follow up with the city manager and see, have we evaluated that? I know that when they redid the street grid, they basically evaluated that, they didn't make it as, it used to be a little bit easier because you get even more people turning from Murphy coming south into that. So basically you're only dealing with the north traffic coming off of Murphy going left and right, and then the east and west traffic on Iowa. But ultimately, it's like, I think conceivably there could be something done in those intersections to remind people that there are pedestrians there, especially with some of the foliage. So we'll see what I can do. Isa asked, where can we see the designs for Mary Evelyn? How is the design for kids walking, biking, and getting to the school bus stop on that crossing? I'm also concerned about the amount of road work that block in particular gets. So ultimately, what we approved was a general design, and staff goes into the deep lower level design. I'll put the link on where the high level designs are, and understood that they will be taking the VTA route into consideration as far as that's concerned. And ultimately, hopefully, once the Caltrain grade separation happens, it'll be a lot less traffic to deal with, and hopefully a lot less construction in general. Jeff asked, I saw you at Urban Plates last week. Love the support that you give local restaurants. What new restaurants will be opening soon in Sunnyvale? So right now, let's see, there Muma Boba opened up next to Big Five a few weeks ago, actually last month. Dave's Hot Chicken opened a few weeks ago, and they're open until 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 11 a.m. to midnight on Friday and Saturday. Pacific Catch, I posted about them yesterday. They opened at City Line right across from Target. They opened last week, and that's actually where I've had several meals there already, and so happy to be able to support those local businesses. But definitely it's always good to have lots of new businesses opening up in Sunnyvale, and talking to the owners, hearing that in general our planning staff did a good job as far as getting them through the process, and as quick as could be considered, but not rubber stamping things, but giving appropriate feedback, and most importantly, reasonable expectations on when things would get done. Jim asked, does the city own the Sunnyvale rail station's parking structure? It appears that homeless folks are residents in the stairwells at both ends. So yes, we're told public safety and the city's service organizations, NGOs, are working on with the unhoused there to get them the county health support and into hopefully transitional or permanent housing. So that problem is actually known. Garrick asked, whose bright idea was it to put forward AB 2011, and who's supporting it? Who's accountable at election time? So Assembly Member Wicks from the East Bay co-authored that with Scott Wiener, Senator Scott Wiener, but our Assembly Member Berman was actually one of the co-authors also. So definitely We've already put out that veto request for AB 2011, SB 6, and a handful of other bills. So, that's one of the things that we do from a city standpoint to say, this either is not implementable. The state often does unfunded requirements, or this kind of goes against what our planning is. Joanna asked, what is going on across from Whole Foods? There's an art corner there. So you have the Redwood Square, but on one side of the street, just south of um, Target, sorry, just north of Target, you have the Redwood Square. But just to the east of that, so basically just north of Whole Foods, there's an art park that's going in there. I did a quick tour last week, and that should be opening up actually next week. So uh, good to see, new open space opening up in the city from that standpoint. Um, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks for joining me again for a very short week, short update for Labor Day week. We are still in uncertain times. There are definitely new issues always coming up, but I really want you to know that no matter what challenges we face them together. I'm proud of Sunnyvale and how our residents have really responded to those challenges over the last 2 years. And I'm thankful for everyone who helps out in the community, showing kindness, showing empathy, showing generosity in so many ways. Your actions and your attitude really do make a difference. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We're in this together, and we will get through this together. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful weekend and stay cool. Okay, goodbye.